Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this cabinet meeting of the 3rd of February. The first item on the agenda is to receive apologies, and we have apologies from Councillor Liz Withington. And I don't believe there are any further apologies. No. The next item was the minutes, but that's obviously to be deferred. There are no items of urgent business. Were there any declarations of interest, please? No. Okay. There are no public questions and statements. Were there any member questions at this point in time? No. Okay. So we move on to item 7 then, which is recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Might it be more helpful for me to cover those when we come to those items on your agenda, because all the points that I would wish to raise relate to business that you will be considering?
I don't know, just because I wonder whether it might be better that it's minuted or in the same place, just so people know what Overview and Scrutiny we're talking about. That was the main point. And if you want to come back, obviously, please do. Yeah,
I'm happy to do it whichever way you like.
Yeah, if you can just talk through us briefly now, and then if you want to come back on those items, absolutely. I just think, just for the purposes of the minutes, it might be better.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it that way. The first item relates to Treasury Management Strategy Report 25-26, and there were 2 recommendations in relation to that. One was for full council to approve the Treasury Management Strategy Report, and the second was for the leader of the District Council to engage with other District Council leaders to agree a collective approach to central government seeking its advice and guidance on the impact of devolution and local government reorganisation on the financial stability of the County of Norfolk. So if that makes sense as I've read it out, there is obviously a significant element of concern that the transition period that there will inevitably be between now and whatever the new world might be, there is concern that we collectively work together and work through central government, have an understanding of what central government, what rules of engagement the central government might want to impose upon us, and that we work collectively so that we don't destabilise our own financial system and indeed the wider financial system of the county.
Mm-hmm.
My second one is relates to capital strategy. So that's the strategy for 25-26. The first recommendation was that full council approves the 25-26 capital strategy, and the second to undertake with the portfolio holder for finance, estates and property services a joint review of the capital bids process to look at how it can effectively engage in this process from 26-27. So that was about how Overview and Scrutiny can engage in that process of how bids kind of start off as proposals and reach a position on the capital bids programme. So I don't know whether the cabinet member wants to comment on that, but that was with the cabinet member's agreement.
Okay, go ahead.
So the reason that came about was that the committee didn't have an understanding of the work that went into the cabinet agreeing capital bids. So there's a process that's followed at all levels of the authority, including the cabinet, where we arrive at a position. There was a comment at the committee about not understanding business cases for things. And whilst I'd outlined that that was where the decision would be ultimately made when it came to Cabinet about the viability of such things, there was a wish to understand further. But it would be my wish to link that into another piece of work that I've agreed to do along with Officer Stankley about the understanding of which of our services is discretionary and which obviously we have to do legally. So I think there's possibly a wider element that we need to play, because obviously I did point out that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee do have input into capital requirements that come in through the year, because all the papers come through the budget monitoring process. So it's not about anything beyond an increasing depth of understanding.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I think it comes into two parts, really. One is to understand the process, and the second, to look and see whether we can engage in that in a way that would add value to it.
Okay, thank you.
The third mention concerns the draft revenue budget for 25-26. There are four recommendations in that. The first one is Cabinet considers the list of proposed savings and agree on which ones should be taken forward so that a balanced budget can be recommended to full council. The second is an alternative option for balancing the budget should be agreed to replace savings not taken if there are any. I think the wording of that is maybe slightly confusing. That I think applies to where you have a list of savings and those savings don't deliver for one reason or another, that you have others that you can call upon to fill those in, so you've got greater contingency and flexibility. The third one, Cabinet agreed to any additional funding announced as part of the final local government settlement announcement to be transferred to reserves. And the fourth one, Cabinet decides which proposed new capital bid should be recommended to full council for inclusion in the capital programme. That concludes the recommendations that were made at our meeting on the 22nd of January.
Come back in.
Just to add further clarity, those recommendations are the ones that are set out in the agenda pack. But the recommendation, the second recommendation, just to add some further information, because I think it's been slightly misrepresented there, was that if Cabinet choose not to accept any of the savings proposals in recommendation 1, then we should look for a different alternative to balance the budget. So it's not an in-year proposal, it's for this specific budget proposal.
Yeah, okay, understood. Yeah. So, and just stepping back a bit in terms of the impacts of devolution on financial sustainability, etc., and working with our neighbouring authorities. So, just to deal with that one now, obviously, we've been in conversations not with just colleagues or counterparts, I should say, from Norfolk, but also Suffolk, and that work continues. And there has recently been some representation made to government in the form of actually more than one letter from ourselves on various items of detail lacking, and we'll perhaps report back on those in due course, but certainly we're seeking some assurances in respect of some of which in respect of what you said. So some of that work is certainly underway. Okay, so can I propose then that we accept the recommendations? Is that right? Seconded by Councillor Shires, and all those in favour, please. Yeah, is that unanimous? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Item 8 is the delegated decisions for December to February, and that is, well, I propose that we note that unless there are subject to any queries or questions. No. Okay. Item 9 is reporting progress on implementation of the corporate plan 23 to 27, and in respect of the action plan for the end of quarter 3. So just to first of all provide a quick walkthrough, and if you start. So if I can get myself to the right agenda item before I do start, that would be best. Sorry, just a moment. Okay, well, if you start at the appendices, the action plan itself, which I think is page 17, page 35 of the digital agenda, just a quick walk through there. So in respect to the first item, on the action plan, we're obviously still waiting for things to progress with the inspectorate there. In respect of the third, on the commissioning studies of EV and photovoltaics, obviously a significant milestone reached with the installation of the solar voltaic panels at North Walsham Victory in December. So our thanks from Cabinet to officers and also others that contributed to that work. If we go on to the next page, the fifth, so as detailed here, we've been trialing the cessation of glyphosate on areas of the public realm we are responsible for, not of course to be confused with the public highway. We're limiting this obviously to the things that we have, such as parks and public realm areas, which we are responsible. The next one is obviously the Coastal Schemes Monthly Chroma. And so we're holding a small celebratory event this week to mark the substantial completion of the Chroma works. That's been very, very good, and certainly already apparent in the detail in the impact that it's having. Just flipping over a page or so to 15. So obviously, you know, we're seeking to progress things at Whole Country Park. And of course, we'll report back in future. Item 16, of course, we've received the funding commitment now for Chroma, and we'll continue in respect of North Walsham and Fakenham. So that's a really good outcome there. Down to 18, there's certainly some further progress in terms of parishes that have expressed interest in developing for them, their neighbourhood plans, but it will be for us further neighbourhood plans, as was recently reported, I think in the last paper. So that's good information, and that's good progress, and good luck to those parishes as they undertake that work. Item 19 is in respect of the nutrient neutrality. So credits are now being released for nutrient mitigation, with a number of schemes now able to progress and go ahead, of course. So our thanks to officers and all counterparts at other locations, authorities, etc., for continuing to work towards this. Item 20 is the second homes premium. So that was obviously rated in the last quarter report, but that's now completed as per our discussion at full council. Really, it's obviously significant, and not least for the impact that it will have on families needing homes. Item 24, so that's on to the next page. So really just to say that there are events in the diary now, so we're looking forward to those in due course. Item 25, and just to really highlight really that it was a hugely successful event in respect to Bacton, drawing together businesses and organisations to the council to highlight and explore the opportunities that exist at Bacton in the medium to long term, which was very well received. The next item 26 is in respect of the Stalham High Street Task Force. So that's now obviously complete, but of course we look to continue work towards a tangible outcomes really. Item 29, which is on the following page, in respect to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and obviously that's on the agenda today, of course, and continuing to work towards delivery targets. Item 32 is the survey. So, sorry, yes, it is. There's quite a lot there. Sorry, let me just get the number right. Yeah, item 32, sorry, was in respect of managed industrial, commercial land, etc. So appreciable economic activity ongoing in the district, which we're continuing to support, of course. So we're involved in numerous different conversations. Sorry to get confused about the numbers there. Item 34 on the following page is obviously in respect to the peer review. So very good feedback at the update session. And obviously the council will continue to work towards progressing to meet further actions agreed. Item 36, so this is another one that's now completed. So certainly as an action point in progress, is obviously significant progress has obviously been made across planning, and it's very appreciable. So I think we're very grateful to the to all officers that have worked towards that. But just to highlight really that one is now completed on the action plan list. 37 is in respect to the value for money of temporary accommodation provision, now also completed, recommendations being acted upon and a useful exercise. 39, which is on the next page. So obviously the car parks are on our agenda today in respect of at least the enforcement. Item 43 on the page following. So sadly, not looking to take forward this program in the same way or style, but work continues to engage with the youth at locations such as the country parks, etc. But this is certainly a resource issue for us moving forwards. And finally, just to close, item 44, the accounts have been submitted. So in closing, I would like to reflect on, first of all, the fact that it's still really good, successful work towards meeting the targets in the action plan and corporate plan, but the impacts of devolution and local government reorganisation do bring up a number of considerations, and that we do need to reduce the number of actions for the next year now, and being realistic about what we cannot justify continuing to try and meet and realize. So that's potentially less focus on dotting I's and crossing T's in future, and razor sharp focus on service delivery for our residents, particularly those that need the most help, ensuring our core services are being run effectively as they are now, and finally ensuring that our role in the local tourism industry, our property portfolio, our coastal adaptation and defences work continues. So we've got to obviously change focus significantly as a result of what's happening, and that will be reflected in the emerging action plan for the year ahead from April. So it is it's a significant change of focus perhaps for the next year, but we've also got to be mindful of actions in this year as well, and how much we continue to focus on them, or whether we deliver them in a different way, etc. And that's also been reflected on previously in terms of some of the opportunities that have arisen that we didn't necessarily know or count upon last time when we discussed the action plan, in terms of the Fakenham Leisure Centre, things that have come up where the opportunity is too good, we have to reprioritise. But certainly the impacts of the discussions in terms of devolution and local government reorganisation means we need to change, be increasingly focused in that regard. So that was all from me. Were there any questions on the action plan, please. Go ahead, councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've partially put your finger on the point that I really want to raise, and that is, as we enter the transition period for local government reform, I wonder if you've thought about a SWOT analysis of what that really presents, what that looks like, and work through what some of those opportunities that you mentioned just a little while ago might be in that process. So it does seem to me that it begs an exercise of that kind to work out what our strengths and weaknesses and so forth, and also what the threats are and the risks are. So I think there's a piece of work there that really ought to be done and really ought to feature in that sort of wider consideration of the corporate plan. And speaking about risk, I realise that risk rests in terms of its oversight anyway with GRAC. But I do believe that we have to be very mindful that all organisations that go through significant change are at risk of performance dip. And that's very hard to combat completely, but we need to be alive at, not only in the delivery of our services and the considerations of our staff, but us as councillors as well. So there's quite a lot, I think, to consider there, and perhaps thought should be given about how we can best mitigate those risks. I'll leave that one with you, Mr. Chairman.
If I can come in first, and then I'll hand over to Steve. So yeah, certainly I agree with most of what you've said there. And that as I said in the preamble, really, service delivery has to be one of our significant focuses moving forward. But moving away from ongoing policy development and other such things that perhaps we can't justify so much. We're certainly meeting to discuss some of the challenges and risks moving forward already, and that some of that work will develop over time. So certainly the cabinet are working towards a lot of what you said then. Mr. Batch, go ahead.
Thank you. I think all the points Councillor Dixon's raised are very appropriate. We've tried to maintain a calm position in respect of this matter at the present time in the absence of any detail from the government. The white paper was obviously published on the 16th of December, and the County Council has expressed a desire as an upper tier authority to move towards a mayoral combined authority. There is no detail at the present time in terms of what local government reorganisation might be. The white paper makes reference to new unitary authorities of a minimum population size of 500,000. That is really challenging, and there are very few authorities nationally, either urban or rural, of such large populations. That presents some very significant challenges in a county like Norfolk, with a very diverse urban, rural, coastal dimension to be considered. So we are working with our partners in districts and county to understand what this might mean for the county and for this council. We were expecting guidance to be issued by the government. They pledged to do that by the end of January. We're now on the 3rd of February, and no such guidance has yet been issued. As soon as that is, it's my intention to, and I've discussed this with the leader, to hold a all-member briefing. We also need to consider what that means in terms of our engagement with our town and parish councils, because there's a lot implied in the white paper, but very little detail. So we haven't wanted to set a series of hairs running. We are lean. We haven't had a lot of time to spend talking about what might be in the absence of detailed guidance. So there is a report coming to Cabinet on the 3rd of March. It's prepared in draft form around our corporate plan, annual action plan moving forward. and it is proposed within that to create some space for both members and officers to engage and ensure that North Norfolk's interests are properly raised and promoted in the context of any local government reorganisation. The leader has said he's already made formal representations beyond MHCLG, particularly to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, to understand how the district's tourism infrastructure might be financed moving forward, because it is discretionary. There's a paper on today's agenda that talks about toilets, which are a discretionary activity. We think the pressure on discretionary service provision will increase moving forward. So how do we safeguard those assets in the future? And similarly, there's nothing in the white paper around our coast protection and management responsibilities. And so the leader has written to Steve Reed, the Secretary of State for DEFRA, also raising those issues. So I want you to understand that we are over this. We have not spent a lot of time speculating what might happen in the absence of guidance. As soon as that guidance is issued, we would engage with all members further. And if necessary, a paper can go to GRAC, also identifying those corporate risks. But the conversations that I've had with the leader are around possibly scaling back or having to review the ambition of the corporate plan, because we won't have the bandwidth to do both.
Yeah, and then certainly, to emphasise what Mr. Batcher said there, I really do think we're seeing the potential for all of our assets to be really at risk. And obviously, we're discussing the future of public toilets. I'll come back to that narrative, but certainly there's a lot of questions about where different things will be going. But we're progressing through those. We get the information, of course, and when this further detail arrives, whether it's today or whenever, we'll begin to discuss a potential members briefing to see where we are. But come in, Councillor Dixon, you want to come back?
Yes, thank you for that, and thank you to the Chief Executive for outlining that position in greater detail. I fully recognise that until we get much more information, we aren't able to push forward very far. It's a matter of really preparing the ground and preparing our minds really around the challenges that will present themselves progressively as time passes over the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. So certainly, whilst we're not proposing a rewrite of the corporate plan, it changes the scale of what we can achieve. I think one of the significant impacts across the local government sector might be in terms of reaching net zero goals. For instance, I'm concerned about that. It will change the ability, I think, for councils to work towards those goals. But that aside, maybe some of our primary focuses have got to be around the tourism economy and continuity of services, etc. So clearly a lot to do here. Item 10, sorry, just to say, can we note that? Oh, Councillor Holiday, go ahead.
Well, in light of the comments about LGR, I'll not bore you with my questions about the grading, which I had a few. But anyway, a couple of questions. One about the mobile coverage. And I really do feel that we aren't tackling that properly. I've got 2 villages with almost no mobile coverage. So I think I find that I was a little bit surprised to see that that's graded as green, and that's a really big issue for us. And the other was number 35, which was, again, in the light of LGR and budgetary issues. I was somewhat surprised to see that you're recruiting for a strategic head of IT. And I wondered what the business case was that underpinned that decision. Thank you very much.
Okay, so do you want to come in first on the mobile coverage? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the digital challenges, both land and air based, are huge, and I'm fully aware of it. And it's something that I've been taking on before I was even on the cabinet. I do have meetings with Officer Fulcher, who's working with me on this, but there is, within the government, there appears to be no one point of contact. So when a village comes along and says, we want a mast, there is no one, it's down to an individual company to make that decision, yet we've thrown billions of pounds at it. I've asked current and previous MPs, where's the governance around those billions of pounds? Who's saying where that's gone? Can we identify it? So the only thing I can give at this moment in time is assurances that actually there is work going on. I am engaged with our county colleagues. I'm aware of there's work going on. I don't know if you're aware that they certain of our refuse vehicles and water company vehicles, you know, monitoring. So we find the real not spots, because what companies put out there is not the truth, and we know that. And we're also through the strategy as we go forward, we're identifying bits of land where we may be able to offer them to put masts rather than coming and imposing. So I can't. I'd be lying if I said, oh, yes, we can get you a mast tomorrow. It's not in our control or our gift, but we're certainly trying to get that discussion, because I'd like a strategy. My background is in radar and communications. And if they can give me a strategy, we can help them deliver those difficult to place masts. So I don't know if that doesn't really answer your question, but there is work going on.
Can I come back on that? Because I've
Sure.
had separate conversations with both the current MP and the ex-MP and various providers about this. And I didn't realise that you were taking on this mantle. So I've got a separate path. Sorry, I've got the microphone on. I've got a separate path and I'm duplicating your work. So it'd be really helpful if you could disseminate what you've done, and also perhaps we could work together, because I've just written to our current MP this weekend to say what, you know, how are we progressing it, because the last conversation wasn't very helpful. We've got the Ofcom coverage checker. I've sent it out to my parishes to say which postcodes are they getting the coverage that Ofcom says. And obviously there's a gap, but if you look at the Ofcom Connected Britain survey from 24, it says that, you know, rural coverage is 94% or something across England. And you know that we're in the 6% that hasn't got the coverage, but they don't seem to care at all because the urban areas are covered. So my plea to you would be, can we coordinate? Because I'm doing essentially what you're doing, and I'm certainly not getting anywhere. And I totally agree, it's completely fragmented and no one knows who to talk to. But so it'd be really helpful if we could work
Well,
together.
maybe just have an offline conversation and then.
No, I agree
start.
that, and that's the problem. It's fragmented. There's no one place to go, and we need to make sure we don't do that. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So yes, I'll be happy to engage with you. It's only recently I've engaged with officers. It's something I was doing the same as you in the past, and we do need to do something about this. And I've been on about this for years, as the leader will know. I used to nag his ear before I was on the cabinet. So yeah, I'll let me catch up with Officer Fulcher this week, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
Okay. And in respect of the IT recruitment, so I think you're referring there to the service reviews, and that's been one outcome of the service review. So obviously, you know, we're not expecting local government reorganisation to happen tomorrow. There is a few years away to go yet, at least, even if it does proceed. So we obviously need to ensure that service is running as well. It's running very well now, but those were the recommendations that we're looking to progress as per that service review, really. So that was a successful exercise, very useful. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Callum. No. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sure it's a fantastic review and it's much needed. But in the medium-term financial strategy, we talk about sharing services and improving efficiency and partnership models. And I just wondered if, you know, we could be doing this smarter.
That was also covered in the service review. So yeah, I'm very confident that we're in the right place within. So thank you. Okay, item 10, if we note those, is the medium term financial strategy. Councillor Shires, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I feel like I've spoken about this probably more times than I have, so please forgive me if I repeat something I've previously said. This went through the scrutiny process, and as the scrutiny committee did point out, it's a very good document. This is the best form that I think we've had it in. It's very readable and it makes a lot of sense. So thank you to Officer King for his work on that. I just want to add that whilst when this document was created, it was created for a period of time. Obviously, we're looking at a balanced budget in a different financial position to the one that was reported in the strategy. So upon the agreement of the budget at the next full council meeting, this would obviously be updated. We're not going to work on something that was a point in time. It's a fluid document. So just to answer any questions, considering our financial position has changed from when we first proposed this document.
Okay, thank you. And thank you also to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the attention to the paper previously. Were there any questions? Okay, so propose that we recommend to full council the approval of the medium-term financial strategy. I'll second that. All in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. The next item is item 11, and that's the Treasury Management Strategy. Councillor Shires.
Thank you again. So this and the following paper both went through Review and Scrutiny Committee together. So just to say that it has been through the scrutiny process, I'm actually really quite delighted that Treasury Management gets the attention that it hasn't had in years before. So along with what Councillor Dixon had said, the recommendations that the committee put forward, I also concur with. So unless anybody's got questions on Treasury Management, then I'm happy to propose the paper as is.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just to add to what I said earlier, Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered both this item and the capital strategy in its overview capacity rather than scrutiny, because you will know now that Treasury Management and capital strategy rests with GRAC rather than with Overview and Scrutiny. So it was in that capacity that it considered it. We are fortunate in having cross-population between GRAC and Overview and Scrutiny. So I think what you've heard in terms of recommendations is maybe something similar that you would have heard from GRAC were it to have gone there. So I just point out that it was overview rather than a deeper scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Shires.
I just want to make one additional comment in that the 5.1.2, which were the affordability prudential indicators, there was an error there which has been corrected for cabinet papers. So it differs to the Overview and Scrutiny papers.
Okay. Any further points or questions? If not, I'm happy to second the recommendation of Councillor Shires that this is recommended for approval at full council. Is all in favour, please? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 12 then is the capital strategy, and back to yourself, Councillor Shires.
Thank you very much. Again, this was at Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It feels like it was last week, but at the most recent meeting, it was looked at then. The comments were made more about the mindfulness of agreement to borrow in more than anything, in that seeing the levels that we've agreed came as a surprise to some of the committee members. So these figures are reported year on year. So I've got nothing else to add, and I recommend the strategy paper.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. It's very, very thorough, and it's clear, sort of comparing to other local authorities. We're publishing, I think, a wealth of detail really compared to many. So I appreciate that does also make it harder to understand, and that did prompt some interesting questions from members of the public last week. But levels of information dissemination are only increasing really from this authority. But of course it's very well presented, and hopefully if you've got a grounding in local government finance, you understand it. But appreciate for the layman it might be a little bit difficult. But thank you again for work in the production of this, and I presume you're proposing the recommendation it's approved at full council, or recommended to full council. Were there any questions before I second that? No? Okay, well, I'll second that. All of those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 13 is the council tax discounts and premium determination for 25-26. Councillor Shires.
Thank you very much. So this is a paper that comes every year. So the only point that I wanted to add to this was the second homes council tax. Obviously, that's something that we spoke about at the previous full council extraordinary meeting. Other than that, I would just like to recommend this paper.
Yeah, obviously we're almost stepping back really and dealing with this again as it's been to the full council, but it also has to go through the process here as well. So we've substantially discussed that, and obviously media interest is still present on the second homes premium. I think there's some items on local media today and tomorrow in respect of that, but it will obviously make a significant difference to the current position in terms of those dealing with housing and homelessness. So that was very good, and obviously in respect of the other items, you know, huge amount of work has gone into this yet again. And actually back in terms of the second homes premium, you know, I didn't really appreciate the impact that the complex calculation in respect of the tax base became even more complex with the second homes premium being agreed. So very much appreciate the work that officers are doing in respect of that. So any questions on that item? Obviously it's the recommendation is to recommend to full council, but we know we've done that, but let's pass that through. So proposed, seconded, all of those in favour, please. Yeah, unanimous. Item 14 is 25-26 budget savings from public toilets. So I wanted to start by thanking parish councils, local members, businesses who have engaged positively with us on this challenge or series of challenges. But I wanted to challenge the narrative here again, as we alluded to earlier on. These conversations on sustaining public toilet provisions has certainly not ended. Indeed, given the possibilities of being rolled into a much larger unitary council with responsibilities for social care, children's services, and likely inheriting a significant proportion of the county council's current debts, which have been in excess of 900 million. It's not just the pressures of homelessness, which are our big impact, and the nightly paid temporary accommodation costs, which are putting these provisions at risk in future. So the conversation is anything but over. Indeed, it's likely to increase in both size and scale as we seek to find ways of ensuring these quite disparate assets, really, in terms of, you know, how they're spread across the district, how they are retained for the long term, and obviously recognizing that they are important both to communities and local economies. Local representatives will all need to take a realistic approach to securing these assets in future, many of which are isolated from revenue possibilities. But in the meantime, conversations are continuing with businesses, and in terms of the specifics, we've also got Potter Heigham there in terms of those conversations. And we'll obviously seek to retain Stalham in its current location for at least 12 months whilst the conversations continue with the town council on potential other options there. We're continuing to seek a solution in Walsingham until March 2026. And Westranton at least until the summer season is over. So there's a lot of different possibilities there in terms of those locations, and obviously we've already rationalised facilities at Waybourne and successfully transferred Hickling Staithe. I'll get that the right way around. So we've achieved appreciable savings as detailed in the report. with some ongoing savings to be detailed, including which will be included in the budget. But I just wanted to get across really that there's a lot more work to do here. You know, if you think of some of the locations of some of these public toilet facilities and what that could look like in a decade's time under a unitary council, I am concerned about that. So we're going to continue this conversation. As we've said, the cabinet members are already meeting. But notwithstanding that, of course, we've still got a lot of pressures due to housing and homelessness, particularly. We don't know what the next year will bring. But as we've seen in terms of the settlement, the government is not focused on shire districts in rural areas. So lots of things to think about, but still recognising these facilities are, you know, very important, and that's why we've still got more than any other shire district, in fact, in the country. Councillor Shires.
I just wanted to add a little bit to that. More so, it's about the future, and we've spoken about our concerns for assets going forward and what we need to do to protect them for local communities. So when we first started this journey on the public toilet savings, it was a conversation that we'd started. It wasn't a decision that we'd made at that meeting, as can be shown by this paper today. So again, it's just to reiterate that we still need to make sure that these are protected for the future. There seems to still be a little bit of confusion about capital and revenue spend, and it's the revenue spend that we need to be saving rather than the capital investment. We can only spend capital investment one way. So we just need to make sure that there's a very clear line drawn there. But also, I'm quite pleased that we've managed to balance the budget and buy some extra time for the toilets outlined in here and the conversations that we're going to need. It was quite a scary position potentially that we wouldn't have been able to buy any time at all. So again, to the communities that are listed in here, we've bought some time, so let's have those conversations.
Yeah, and as I say, those conversations are still going ahead. We had meetings with Stirling Town Council last week. Councillor Toy.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Shires and yourself already touched on it, but it's important, I think, to make that point that we didn't just say we need to save money, close them. We realise their value. We're working hard. You know, in terms of economic development, sustainable growth, we need communities to have the facilities they want and that in them. And that's why I'm grateful that we've worked at this and that we continue to work at this and realise their importance. So I just wanted to reinforce that again. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted reassurance really how long the Weybourne Eco Loo was going to be there, because there's no time frame given. I wanted assurance that it was going to be kept open. The
I
other thing I'm
can't offer you
questioning
that
is,
reassurance because we've got to monitor it, and in terms of the levels of abuse of that facility, if that becomes too significant, we will certainly be reviewing it. And sorry to be quite blunt with that, but it is the case that it's been treated very badly, actually. But what we will also seek to do in the longer term is continue the conversation with the parish council about whether there's a more sustainable option. Because I thought that was a useful conversation with the parish council. But what I can't do is guarantee the future. We can't guarantee, obviously, the operation of any of the toilet facilities because of vandalism, etc. But this is a special case given the level of abuse it's received from particular groups that are misusing it. So what we can't promise is that there's just not an endless bucket of money we can throw at it. That's what I'm trying to say. But continue.
so what's the evidence for the misuse? Have you actually got,
We tanker it,
chemical-
having to tanker it out.
but are you actually, was campervan misuse?
Well,
You know
yeah,
that?
yeah, I do certainly believe that. Yeah, that certainly the volume, but also chemicals within that will prevent the breakdown. So we've obviously been tankering it out quite regularly, and that's been a lot of the cost. So removing the other temporary facilities is obviously a rationalization of the facilities there. And those facilities, in addition, were costing a significant amount of money, and it, you know, essentially it was the most expensive public toilet in the district because of that that provision. So we've achieved quite a significant saving there, but yeah, we do need to continue ongoing monitoring of that facility, particularly to ensure it is sustainable. Yeah, I appreciate it's you know, not going to be an easy conversation in respect of, you know, the future of assets in your ward, Councillor Holiday, but you know, I'm committed to trying to do that and achieve the long-term retention of those facilities. So we'll see where we get to. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And thank you to you and to Steve Blatch, the Chief Exec, for coming to the meeting in Walsingham. I think that was much appreciated. It certainly was appreciated by me, if maybe not anyone else. And also the fact that there is a reprieve of a year. I think I'll just take slight issue on page 142, the tail end of 2.44, where it says, in some respect, the responsibility of the provision of such facilities used by large numbers of pilgrims should arguably be met by church organisations rather than district council taxpayers. I think, you know, I think it's missing the fact that actually within the church, within both the Anglican shrine and the Catholic shrine, which is actually not in Walsingham but is in Howden St Giles, there are toilet provisions, but there are a large number of, I think just saying all the visitors are pilgrims, I think is wrong. And it's a point I keep making. There's pilgrims, but there are other visitors who don't go into the churches. There's a large amount of walking. And although they're called pilgrimages, a lot of it is people who wouldn't be seen going in a religious organisation, they're walking anyway, and we get a substantial number of visitors all during the tourist season that come off the miniature railway from Wells. And that's a large number of people that tend to just walk around the village and leave again, and they're not allied to any religious organisation. So I think that bit needs to be rethought, because there are 300,000 visitors, but a lot of those are people that are day visitors and actually aren't connected to to either of the main shrines. Okay.
Well,
Thanks.
I mean, just to say, really, in reply to that, we understand the value of the facilities in Walsingham, and you know, again, similar to the point I was making about not actually just Weybourne, but other facilities in the district. You know, we'll be continuing to try and have that conversation about how we retain those. They're all obviously quite unique, these facilities, in terms of their locations and their usage and the demands upon them. And Walsingham's certainly another case in point. You know, it's a lovely village. I love visiting over the summer, particularly. I'm obviously, well, I should say I'm not obviously, but I'm not going on a pilgrimage either. I'm just a day visitor. It's a very unique location. So I certainly understand that. During the tour of assets that Councillor Shiers and I previously undertook, you know, we certainly appreciated its unique facility in its build and design as well. You know, it's appreciable actually. So certainly, you know, wanting to see a facility there, the facility there retained in the long term. It's just working at however we can achieve that, particularly given those challenges in the potential long term with reorganisation. So, you know, committed to having a further conversation with you, Councillor Fitzpatrick, and obviously your community about how we achieve that. Yeah, certainly in respect to the other locations as well. Councillor.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that Hickling Ward is the leader in this conversation. It can be felt that we're bearing the brunt of this, but the asset for us is that we are having this conversation before unification. So we have a chance of preserving our public facilities through any government reorganisation that might otherwise threaten them. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? It's getting ahead of that now. And I think Councillor Dixon asked in respect to potential restrictions and everything. That's I think a big risk here. So we've got to ensure that the government understands how critical it is, I think, in terms of our role in the local tourist economy, particularly how important it is that we get all these issues resolved if we're going to be rolled into a much larger authority. A lot could happen over the next 3 or 4 years, of course. So there's no counting on any of that happening. This continues to be an issue, not least because of the existing financial pressures, and an awful lot of work has obviously been done in terms of the budget this year, and there'll be further in-year savings, etc. But that's the long-term risk that we need to work to address now. Okay, are there any further questions on this item? Anything we didn't cover? No. So I will propose then the recommendations 1 through to 5, seconded by Councillor Shires, and all of those in favour, please. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 15 then is the draft revenue budget for 25-26. Councillor Shires.
Yes, thank you for the patience of everybody in the room that may have heard this more than once. I won't add any further information to that's been shared at Cabinet and ONS previously. I just want to note that we are hoping that our final settlement will be published today. So that just brings into mind that we're doing all this work and we still don't have the final settlement that we're getting from government. So hopefully this is as it is. But I will let everybody know if it's going to change at any point. And I just want to thank everybody that's taken part in the process so far, and that's officers and councillors who have asked lots and lots of questions and who have sat on various committees and continuing to make sure that voices are heard from local communities. So this will be the final time that I will present it before it goes to full council. But I propose the draft revenue budget for 25-26.
Okay. So that's those 4 recommendations proposed there. Were there any questions that we need to cover? And obviously, in a sense, one of the recommendations from Avian Scrutiny there is covered under item 2 in respect to finding alternatives, should it not be possible, etc., or we choose not to take one thing forward for one reason or another. But I think that needs to be objectively assessed, I should say, objectively assessed at the time against priorities and possibilities, etc. So there being no one that's indicated, I'll second the recommendations 1 through to 4, and can I vote all of those in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 16 is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund 25-26 Transition Fund Year arrangements. Councillor Toy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This paper lays out the basis of a 1-year transitional UK SPF following our successful delivery of a 3-year fund, which is in its final quarter. It's planned that the review of that will come to ONS in April. We've yet to hear if there will be a Rural England Prosperity Fund. You'll see at para 2.3 there is much emphasis on collaboration. This is something we've already worked on to best effect and believe we should be continued, as we have to deliver this plan in the 12 months of the next financial year. This will enable us to deliver an early start within the tight timescales. We will continue with the successful initiatives to address fuel poverty and assist in the decarbonisation of dwellings across the district. The majority of the funding will go to provide measurable support to the local economy, including our town centre businesses. This is laid out in the table at 3.2. I'll hope you agree to the recommendations in this report, and I think the officers are here now. With the officers present and myself, we'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. So obviously, Councillor Toy's just introduced the paper. Is there anything you wanted to add as further background whilst you're here? No? Okay. Well, I was first of all wanting to start by thanking you all really for actually, it's quite a multifaceted bit of work here. There's so many different outcomes within it. So lots of different focuses. So thank you for what was achieved previously and what we're, setting out the vision for what we're hoping to do next. And entirely distinct from that, I would, express a twinge of disappointment here. And, I remember the Boris bus coming to Cramer with the promise of more money. And, this money did take quite a while to emerge in that it was supposed to be replacement for EU funding, and we waited a long time for it. And now it's, essentially been halved. That being said, we'll make the absolute best of the opportunity for all of our businesses and communities, make the absolute best opportunity of this funding. So that's what we've demonstrated previously, certainly with the UK SPF, but the effective distribution of all grant funding, etc., that we previously received by our team, and that's certainly been recognised, and is again now by myself. Thank you. But just wanted to make that point really, that there is a factor here that is a further disappointment, I think, to local government, in that we've been promised quite a lot that hasn't emerged. So hopefully we'll receive some information on the REPFA in due course as well. Do you want to come back in? Go ahead.
I think it's important to remember that the way this is delivered, it delivers more than this as a number.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of socially, but actually the number is pretty much doubled by the time we leverage in other stuff by working collaboratively and stuff. So actually we do get the maximum amount of it that we can. That's something that we aim for. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic job in terms of what's been done previously, and I'm entirely relaxed about the work over the next year. So thank you. Is there anything else we wanted to cover? Councillor Holday, go ahead.
It's very pleasing to see these funds coming in. Are the business cases underpinning the decisions where to disperse them? Because I think we made a lot in our open scrutiny meeting about business cases coming to this meeting, and this is where you got a chance to see them.
In terms of each individual grant, do you mean, or?
Well, I think there was a feeling that we didn't quite understand where the money was going. And obviously we have had some information about that, but it would be interesting to see the thought process going as to where you decided what allocations should go to whom. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, obviously we've put a basic outline in the paper here, where we intend to focus on, so with the towns and some possibilities. We now need to work that up because we've got until the new financial year to deliver on this one. And that's what we'll do in the next few months. And then of course, it depends on the schemes that are brought forward to us. When you've got a grant scheme, who applies for a grant? And we then have a process that's been working, which obviously will be part of the reviews that have been through ONS. When those grant schemes come forward, it goes through a process and a board that then comes back to that decision process. So each one is done on its merits, but we've obviously tried to focus in on areas, and that's what this paper lays out, in the areas where we think that we'll be working. I don't know if officers want to add anything to that. Oh.
Thank you. Good morning. I can only add that there's a report going to overview and scrutiny in April, intended to at least, which will outline the delivery of the programme for the past 3 years. So that essentially that programme's coming to an end, and that included the Rural England Prosperity Fund as well as the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. There were grant schemes in both funds, and the full dissemination of those grants the details have been provided in the past, but we'll be doing a sort of roundup report of what that programme contained and what the outcomes were. We'll also at that committee hopefully be outlining the detail of what's coming up for the Shared Prosperity Fund for next year. We haven't yet heard whether there will be a repeat of the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and that was the one that contained the grants to businesses and communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Okay, were there any other questions here? So the recommendations are set out in the paper 1 to 2, and they are proposed by Councillor Toy, seconded by Councillor Fredericks, and all of those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you for your time going to the meeting as well. Okay, item 17 is the non-domestic rates policy. You again, Councillor Shires.
I'm very grateful for whoever put the pack together to give me a short break in between all my papers. Thank you very much for that. So this is a document that we put forward every year. I just want to take a moment to let the Cabinet know that as of the 28th of January, the team had collected 91.23% of all NDR, which is NNDR, which is fantastic. So huge thanks go to the team led very well by Officer Knight, who as much as he's quite integral to our collection of funds and plays a very important role in the day-to-day of the council, is not often here. So I hope he's thoroughly embarrassed. He doesn't really do this for praise, bless his heart. So I just want to outline that some of the schemes from central government are changing. So the one that is coming in, but we don't have any of yet, is the films studio relief. So this is just how the government are supporting local councils and local businesses, really. And I don't foresee that there's going to be any massive impact on us. So Officer Knight has quite kindly provided me with a breakdown. So in terms of retail, leisure and hospitality, the relief scheme has been extended until the 31st of March 26, but with a reduced lower relief of 40%, whereas before it was 50%. So that's quite beneficial for our communities here. The small business relief is due to end on the 31st of March 2026, but up until now the relief is continued, but I believe that's just until the next level of reevaluation. But aside from that, there's no massive changes in what we're doing. But when it comes to discretionary rates relief, for example, there are some recommendations in here about how that's decided. I have sat on panels with Officer Knight and Officer Stankley, where we've looked at some of the larger cases that have come forward for rates relief. So that has been something new since I've undertaken this portfolio.
Thank you, and just add my voice really in terms of the service performance here. Continues to be very good, and as you've said, really in terms of those levels of discretion and exemptions and things that exist at a national level. Obviously, every government likes to sort of dress that up as the emperor's new clothes every year at the budget, as if it's something new. But obviously, as you said, it comes through on a basis agreed during the budget process at the government level and out of our control, of course. Councillor Toy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, just to say that obviously, this is something that comes around every year, but it's important to remember that for local businesses that there are these options, where we've got time limited relief or flood relief, hardship relief and things like that, so that we can assist those businesses that may be going through difficult times, and that we work through that, yet still maintain a really high level of payment. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a great deal of flexibility there. Okay. Were there any questions on the paper? If not, the recommendations are set out on the paper 1, 2, and 3. And that was proposed to recommend to full council. So yes, seconded by Councillor Toy, and all of those in favour, please. Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that was unanimous. Item 18 is the prohibition of inconsiderate and inappropriate vehicle use and related antisocial behaviour. Bit of a mouthful there. Councillor Bringer, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This paper has come about as part of Operation Octane, which is a partnership work between the police and all local authorities in the county. I won't say too much more. It's all fairly well set out in the paper. North Norfolk itself receives a comparatively small number of calls related to these issues, but it is essential that we are in line with our neighbouring authorities. So I'm happy to propose the recommendations.
Thank you. And obviously, just to say, this is based upon issues that have occurred. So it's, you know, it's got to be evidence based. It's got to be solving a real issue. And if other issues emerge elsewhere in the district, that's where the police might ask us to make additions in future. But equally, actually retaining these restrictions in future will also need to be evidence based and prove it's got a value, etc. In terms of you know, ongoing need and potential usage of the PSPO itself in respect of these issues occurring. Councillor Shires, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to offer my thanks to the team really, because North Walsham residents have been dealing with some ASB for quite some time, because we've got lovely wide straight roads and we have a number of car parks in the town centre, and some of the behaviour has caused a lot of issues. So North Walsham residents will be particularly grateful for this, as will the North Walsham beat managers who have done their best but have been quite frustrated. So I just wanted to point that out, and thank you to my district councillor colleague, Councillor Gray, who's been quite strong on dealing with this locally. So a huge thank you from North Walsham for the work that's gone into this and for bringing this to where it is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fredericks, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I too welcome this and the fact that we can add areas to this, but it needs to be evidenced by the public. So I would recommend that if you find that there's antisocial behaviour, please report it to the police on 101, because they need the evidence. We can't go on anecdotal evidence to produce these things. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And obviously, you know, any additions and indeed, if when this is reviewed again, will be subject to a consultation process as well, as I understand it. So yeah, you've got to have the reason to need a public space protection order. Any other questions? Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask how frequently this will be reviewed, because I must admit, when I read this paper, I was quite surprised that a couple, you know, other areas weren't included, and presumably the statistics in those areas don't support or warrant inclusion in this measure. But and I know it's difficult to track nuisance from vehicles through safer neighbourhood area partnership meetings, because the statistics aren't collated by the police, because it's a separate system. It's a bit of a bugbear that I've raised with them, so it's a little bit secretive in that sense. And I just wonder as well that the environmental protection team, are they comfortable with the relationship that they have with the police in terms of how noise nuisance in particular is monitored and actioned from the council's point of view? It's an area which is, I think, quite confusing to get to the bottom of in terms of who does what enforcement, as between the areas shared by the police and the council.
Yeah, okay, well then thank you, that's useful. So yeah, certainly in terms of the areas before, they've been proposed by the constabulary themselves. So again, it's evidence based. So if there are further additions, we'll have to go through a consultation process to amend those. It's not impossible. I think I'm right in saying it's 4 years, is it?
3.
3?
So a public space protection order lasts 3 years, has to be reviewed during the latter part of its life in order to be, if you want to renew it and continue it. I think in terms of Councillor Brown's question, it was probably more about how often will they be reviewed in the event that issues appear in some of the areas that are not covered. And the answer to that is that the police will come forward and say, we've got evidence or intelligence that suggests, and we will begin the process then within that environmental protection team to look at reviewing that information and beginning a consultation process in order to include, or in order to bring a separate order, because it will be a separate PSPO, public space protection order, for that locality. So we won't review them per se on a regular basis. It will be intelligence led. The police will come to us as part of this Operation Octane, very promptly to say we have intelligence or issues in these localities. Coming to the latter part of your question, I think Councillor Brown, about the relationship between environmental protection and the police, there is an exceptionally good relationship between environmental protection. So obviously we have the operational partnership team, which the police sit within our building, officers between environmental protection and those members of the operational partnership team from the police work incredibly closely, almost on a day-to-day basis. So I have no concerns whatsoever about that position in terms of nuisance. I think in general, the clarity about who does what is there and is provided. There are details on our website if you want to look at information about statutory noise nuisance and the investigation of, and we work quite closely with the police in terms of them supporting us in terms of some of that action. On vehicle stuff, obviously some of that, where legislation overlaps in terms of noise and driving offences, we do noise. The police can do some noise under some of their provision. They do driving offences. And that's why we have to work together. That's why that multi-agency and interagency working is so important. And that's why these public space protection orders are important, because it allows the police to deal with things, because they can also enforce the public space protection orders. So it allows the police another tool in their toolbox where there is a bit of a gap in the legislation, where they're on effectively almost private land, but it's related to noise and nuisance and those activities, antisocial behaviour.
Councillor Shines.
I just wanted to add a little bit more to that, because North Walsham has got a population of car enthusiasts who like to modify their vehicles that they sound slightly more powerful than they are. And that goes for both bikes and cars. And our beat managers have worked really, really hard to speak to the drivers about removing the modifications, that their cars are not as noisy, but also some of the modifications not potentially legal anyway. So on the whole, the drivers are more than happy to reverse the modification. There have been 1 or 2 who haven't. And I think, is it a section 51 that they get? I can't remember if that's the quite right one. PC Barnes will be frowning because I've remembered the incorrect number, and that's one of her favourite notices. And that's, you know, it's a series of notices that go ahead, and there have been vehicles that have been seized because of the behaviour of drivers. So it's just the joined up approach now of how we do that.
Yeah. Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as someone who's a car enthusiast, both modified and classic, it's important that we bring these in, because it brings a bad name to the many people that are considerate with how they do it. I mean, just a quick look up here, and, you know, just historic and classic vehicles are 8.7 billion pounds into our economy. So we're not, I think I just want to get the news out there. We're not trying to suppress people doing that. It's acceptable, but we need to do it responsibly, and the majority do. But this is to make sure that these people don't come along and ruin our name. Thank you.
And I recall approving a car rally on one of our car parks in recent weeks, in fact. So certainly, and I think it's section 59 of the Police Reform Act. So this, the Section 59 warnings are obviously still being a possibility in terms of ongoing enforcement activities. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, just to echo what Councillor Toy, these are not about preventing people gathering to enjoy their vehicles, which they have invested in and are very proud of, etc. The Public Space Protection Order, as it says in the report, deals with the issues of antisocial behaviour associated with that, which I think, you know, often are the very small minority of people attend these gatherings or car meets. So it is about people driving at excessive speed, accelerating, you know, speeding off and braking, street racing, donuts, other stunts, handbrake turns, burnouts, drifting, revving their engines while stationary, beeping the horn, loud music, putting their litter out from and just general you know, threatening, abusive, intimidating language. So it is not about stopping people gathering. It's about the antisocial behaviour that is often associated with those car meets, again by a relatively small number of individuals.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you. That certainly piqued everyone's interest about it, didn't it? So can we agree the recommendations proposed, presumably by Councillor Bringer? And I'll second, sorry, Councillor Toy seconds that they go it's set out, sorry, in the paper that it's officer recommendations that proposals are accepted in full. So that's proposed and seconded. Can we take a quick vote of all those in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 19 is the future of car park management and enforcement. So just to point out, we've got some exempt appendices here. We've got some exempt detail, which will need to go into private session in order to discuss. And I have had a request to do that. What we'll do now is obviously turn off the camera stream. We'll come back shortly with the recommendation. So can I just take a proposal that we carry out the exclusion of press and public, please? That's proposed and seconded, and all of those in favour. Yeah, is that unanimous? Yeah, thank you. So if we pause the stream then and we'll discuss. Hello, welcome back, and we're just restarting discussion on the future of car park management and enforcement on item 19. We just had a quick discussion about some exempt appendices attached to the report. Are there any further questions on this item? If not, can I invite a proposal on the recommendations 5 and 6, which are set out?
Obviously, I'm happy to propose the recommendations. This is a contract which offers us very good value for money. And residents across the district will recognise the enforcement vehicles. So this is an agreement that we've had with the Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council for quite some time. We've reached the end of the agreement and we've extended it as many times as we can. So I'm proposing a new agreement which would begin on the 1st of April.
Yeah, and as set out in the paper in its entirety, we've objectively assessed. I can't say that today. We've assessed. Let's just say that we've assessed the different possibilities here in terms of managing car park enforcement, and still this offers the best value for money in terms of the operations, against potentially bringing activities back in-house, or if not in part in-house, in terms of, you know, there's a need potentially for even if we did have it in-house, it would be difficult to bring the processing of penalty notices, etc., in-house as well. So we've sort of considered those 3 options in the round, and I'm not going to try and say what I've said today and previously mispronounced a couple of times. So that has been the recommendation, and the reasons set out for it are set out very clearly in the report. So I'm happy to second the proposal. Were there any, just subject to any further questions? No? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just looking at paragraph 4.19 on page 237 of the print agenda, and it's talking about synchronizing ticket machines so that we can save the per transaction 5 pence cost. And that would give us a saving of 25 to 30k. Is that included in what we're proposing today if we vote for the recommendation?
Councillor Shines.
No, so that's in relation to an upgrade in machinery. So that would be an invest to save proposal. So it's just setting out the scene that there are options for us to upgrade our actual car parking machines that are used by the partner already. So we can do that. So it's not something that we've agreed to do. So that's as a result of further capital investment.
And we will be looking at that for definite, or are we considering whether we are going to look at it?
We're always looking at ways to generate income or make further savings. So it's just setting the scene that this is something potentially that we'll be bringing back at some point.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Brilliant. Councillor Brathwaite. Yeah, sure. Okay. So with the recommendations have been proposed and seconded. Can we take a vote of all those in favour, please? Right, that is unanimous. So there's obviously no further need to exclude press or public or undertake further private business, having carried out item 22 already. So we can close the meeting now, and thank you all for your attendance.